The majority of men drift through their existence in a state of semi-consciousness. Their routine involves waking, responding, executing tasks, retiring for the night, and then beginning anew. Constantly, day after day, they permit external forces to dictate their narrative, merely reciting the words provided. This, they mistakenly label as true existence. Machiavelli identified such a state as feebleness, a mere masquerade of habit. Your presence here is no random occurrence. Something drew you specifically to this recording. That magnetism, that subtle, persistent yearning, represents the aspect of you that already grasps the underlying reality. It is the part that has witnessed far too many individuals, music, deferring, sacrificing their self-respect, and diminishing themselves to fit into environments never intended for them. That pattern ceases today. This isn't intended as an inspiring address. Inspiration primarily serves those who are already disoriented. It burns out quickly, leaving no lasting effect. What you are about to acquire, music, is foundational structure, a blueprint, the type of understanding Machiavelli possessed when he regarded power not as a fanciful notion, but as a rigorous discipline. The individual who fails to govern themselves will invariably be subject to the authority of another. Without exception, perpetually. No room for compromise, no allowance for negotiation. Do you aspire to become the man no one can disregard? Then your first task is to become the man you yourself cannot overlook. Cease evading your true self. Stop alleviating, music, the unease. Stop awaiting approval to embody the person you already perceive yourself, music, capable of becoming. The initial maneuver in Machiavelli's methodology is stark in its simplicity. Ascertain your precise current position and be unsparingly candid about it. Type "awakened" in the comments section immediately. The second point, the internal conflict. Before you conquer any external challenge, you must triumph over the battle already raging within you. This is the subject no one wishes to discuss. Everyone is preoccupied with strategies, tactics, and influence, yet they bypass the bedrock. They construct their aspirations on shifting sands, subsequently wondering why everything disintegrates the moment genuine pressure materializes. Machiavelli held no interest in men who crumbled under duress. Music. Instead, he scrutinized those who sharpened their resolve when faced with it. He grasped a truth that most individuals dedicate, music, their entire existence to evading. Your most formidable adversary is not the person opposing you. Your paramount enemy is the iteration of yourself that prioritizes comfort over progress, diversion over discipline, and clamor over quietude. This foe resides within your own psyche, and it operates with cunning. It employs your own voice. It leverages your anxieties, your past missteps, your old grievances as instruments against your inherent potential. It urges you to delay. It suggests the timing is unfavorable. It tells you that you are unprepared. And the stark reality? Most men heed its counsel daily, completely unaware. They misinterpret music, its voice for sound reasoning. They mistake its reluctance for sagacity. However, Machiavelli's code offers no quarter for such self-deception. The code demands that you confront your own shortcomings directly, not to induce shame, music, but to systematically dismantle them. Coldly, analytically, meticulously. Every habit that compromises your resilience, music, must be identified and eliminated. Every justification that shields you from discomfort, music, must be mercilessly stripped away. Every connection, every environment, every routine that pulls you downwards must be scrutinized, music, through the gaze of a strategist, rather than the sentiment of someone desperate for affirmation. This constitutes the internal conflict, and it is the sole conflict that truly matters. Prevail in this one, and the external world transforms entirely. Lose it, and no external plan will ever rescue you. The individual who first masters himself, music, carries himself differently. He thinks differently. He operates on a frequency that the majority of those around him cannot even perceive. If you are prepared to win that conflict, type "I am unstoppable" in the comments right now, and mean every single letter of it. Point 3. Prioritize yourself unapologetically. A falsehood has been subtly implanted into the minds of men for generations. The deceit that putting yourself first renders you selfish, unfeeling, or cruel. That if you opt for your own personal development, music, over another's ease, you are somehow deficient as a man. Society has weaponized guilt, utilizing it to keep capable men restrained, readily available, and perpetually compliant. Machiavelli discerned this manipulation centuries ago. He understood that a man who fails to prioritize himself becomes a mere resource for everyone else's agendas. Convenient, utilitarian, and ultimately expendable. And the most unsettling aspect? Most men who are exploited in this manner believe they are cherished. They confuse accessibility with affection. They mistake necessity for allegiance. They give and give and give until nothing remains, only to be quietly cast aside by the very individuals for whom they sacrificed themselves. This is not loyalty being rewarded. This is vulnerability being exploited. Prioritizing yourself is not an act of cruelty. It is the pinnacle of self-respect, and without self-respect, you possess no bedrock. None whatsoever. You cannot, music, build authority upon an individual who lacks an understanding of their own value. You cannot cultivate influence, music, in someone who requires constant external validation to feel legitimate. The man Machiavelli esteemed was the one who comprehended his intrinsic worth so profoundly that he never needed to advocate for it, perform for it, music, or plead for it. He simply embodied it, and the world adapted accordingly. Now, grasp this clearly. Prioritizing yourself means safeguarding your time with the ferocity of someone who keenly understands its finite nature. It means making choices based on your personal vision, not on the emotions of others. It means being willing to displease individuals who were only content when you operated beneath your true potential. It means nourishing your body appropriately, engaging in vigorous exercise, cultivating clear thought, music, sleeping intentionally, and treating your mind and body as instruments of battle rather than mere vessels for gratification. It means severing ties with anything, any habit, any person, any environment, music, that consistently saps your energy without offering a return. This is not isolation. This is deliberate selection. The individual who meticulously selects what enters his music, life, his thoughts, and his inner circle becomes invulnerable by default, because he is no longer accessible to every single thing and every single person. He possesses standards. He has boundaries forged not from apprehension, but from an unshakable comprehension of his own trajectory. And when a man is certain of his direction, he ceases to be diverted by anything that does not align with it. Music, that level of focus is captivating. That caliber of discipline is uncommon. And uncommon qualities naturally command attention without ever having to request it. Type, "I come first" in the comments, and comprehend that music is not arrogance. That represents the cornerstone of every potent man who has ever walked this earth. Point 4. Silence is your most potent weapon. Most men are incapable of refraining from speech. They constantly provide explanations for themselves. They justify their decisions, defend their choices, and broadcast their intentions to anyone willing to listen. They are convinced that words establish credibility. They believe that being understood is synonymous with being respected. But Machiavelli recognized something far more perilous, that silence is not an absence. Silence, music, is a strategic move. Silence is the tool most men never employ because they are too preoccupied with their own discomfort regarding it. The world is awash with noise. Everyone is exhibiting, broadcasting, oversharing, and clamoring for recognition in some form. And in a world drowning in clamor, the man who is purposefully, intentionally silent becomes, music, the most commanding presence in any space he enters. People cannot decipher him. They cannot, music, anticipate his actions. They cannot manipulate what they fail to comprehend. And that uncertainty, that inability to fully categorize an individual, engenders an involuntary reverence that no amount of overt self-assurance can replicate. Dark psychology intrinsically grasps this principle. The man who speaks less is perceived as possessing greater knowledge. The man who reveals little is presumed to harbor much. Every word you refrain from uttering transforms into an enigma. Every reaction you decline to provide becomes a declaration of authority. When you cease offering explanations to those who were never genuinely interested in understanding you, a fundamental shift occurs. You reclaim energy that was being surreptitiously drained, music, each time you spoke to seek approval masquerading as explanation. Consider how often you have excessively explained a decision to someone who had already formed their opinion about music. You reflect on the numerous occasions you have argued to defend your worth to someone who never intended music to acknowledge it. Every single one of those instances constituted a debit from your power reserves. Machiavelli's man does not engage in arguments. He observes. He does not react impulsively. He calculates. He does not announce his next maneuver. He executes it and allows the outcomes to articulate a message louder than any words he could have chosen. Silence also affects your own internal landscape in a way most men never uncover because they never remain quiet long enough to experience it. It refines your thought processes. It deepens your perception. It enables you to perceive people, situations, music, and dynamics with a lucidity that is simply unattainable when your mind, music, is ceaselessly generating output. The silent man perceives everything. He notes the subtle variations in tone, the fleeting micro-expressions, the inconsistencies between what individuals articulate and what they actually perform. He becomes adept at reading environments, a scholar of human conduct, operating with an intelligence that others cannot equal because they are too engaged in conversation to ever truly observe. Master your music, silence, and you command the room without ever needing to raise your voice. Type, "I move in silence" in the comments right now, because that is precisely the energy you are cultivating. Point 5. Cultivate yourself into something irreplaceable. Mediocrity is comfortable. That is precisely music, why it poses a threat. It demands nothing of you. It necessitates no sacrifice, no discipline, no readiness to endure discomfort while you temper yourself into something more resilient, more astute, and more capable than you were yesterday. Mediocrity will hold the door open for you every single morning and whisper that today is not the day, that you have ample time, that you merit repose, that you have music, already accomplished sufficient. And millions of men pass through that doorway daily without ever questioning its destination. It leads nowhere. It culminates in a version of yourself at 50 years of age that you would be ashamed to introduce to the man you are presently. Machiavelli did not formulate his code for the ordinary man. He crafted it for those who grasp that in this world, you are either actively constructing or passively decaying. And the world will not pause to inquire which option you prefer. So, let the question resonate profoundly. What are you genuinely constructing? Not what you are planning music to erect, not what you intend to build when circumstances align, but what are you assembling music with your hours, your choices, your routines, and your focus right now, today, in this current phase of your life. Because every single day is either an investment into or a depletion from the man you are becoming. There is no neutrality. There is no pause function. Time is the singular resource that advances irrespective of whether you are wielding it with intent or surrendering music, it's a diversion. The man Machiavelli respected above all others was the individual who rendered himself indispensable, not through desperation, not through people-pleasing, but through the relentless cultivation of his own proficiencies. He studied, he trained, he refined music, his intellect, honed his abilities, and broadened his comprehension of the world until he became the kind of man that power, music, naturally gravitates towards. Not because he sought it, not because he performed for it, but because he forged something authentic, something with substance, depth, and undeniable competence, music, that spoke for itself in every room he entered. This is what it signifies to become the man no one can disregard. It is not about outward presentation. It is not about the volume with which you carry yourself or the assertiveness with which you project confidence. Music, it is about the quiet, unshakable certainty that you have undertaken the labor most men refuse to perform. That you awoke when others remained asleep. That you trained when others invented excuses. That you studied when others entertained themselves into insignificance. That you deliberately, music, chose the arduous path, repeatedly, and without awaiting accolades. Cultivate your physique as if it were a weapon you might one day require. Fortify your mind as if it were an impregnable stronghold that no external turmoil can breach. Develop your skills, music, as if your financial survival depended on them, because at some juncture, it will. Cultivate your emotional discipline until you become a man capable of remaining composed amidst a storm, making cool, clear, precise decisions while everyone else around him unravels. Forge your reputation through consistent action over time until it precedes you into every room before you even utter a word. And comprehend this. The man who transforms himself into something rare, something highly proficient, something genuinely powerful, does not pursue opportunities. Opportunities, music, pursue him. People do not overlook him. They cannot afford to. Because replacing him is no simple task. He has forged himself into something, music, that cannot be readily duplicated, outsourced, or substituted. That is the ultimate position of authority, not dominance through aggression, but irreplaceability through excellence. Commence now, not tomorrow, not after the next diversion has run its course. Now, because the man you aspire to become, music, has already been waiting long enough. Type 1 and built different in the comments, and then proceed to demonstrate it to yourself every single day. Point 6. Command your emotions, or they will dictate your fate. Every empire that has ever collapsed first crumbled, music, from within. Every individual who has ever been vanquished suffered defeat internally, music, before the external world ever had the opportunity to complete the task. This is not mere rhetoric. This is a recurring pattern. This is the music, consistent, unyielding, repeating truth of human history that Machiavelli scrutinized with the dispassionate eye of a surgeon and meticulously documented with the precision of a man who refused to deceive himself about what he observed. Emotional fragility, music, is not a character flaw you can afford to disregard. It represents a vulnerability, a fissure in the foundation. And the world, the people around you, and the circumstances of life will pinpoint that fissure, music, with terrifying accuracy and exploit it without mercy and without compunction. Most men believe they exert control over their emotions. They do not. They are merely in a period where their emotions have not yet been tested to a degree that exposes the truth. Subject a man to genuine pressure, genuine loss, genuine betrayal, genuine failure, genuine humiliation, and observe what lies beneath the surface, music, of his composure. Witness how rapidly logic dissipates when emotion seizes control. Observe how swiftly an individual who considered himself disciplined begins to react, to lash out, to make choices from a place of pain rather than from a position of strength. And those decisions, those emotionally, music-driven, impulsive, unstrategic decisions, are the very ones that devastate careers, shatter relationships, burn bridges, and dismantle in a single moment what required years of careful construction to establish. Machiavelli understood that the most perilous individual in any conflict is not the one exhibiting the greatest aggression. It is the one possessing the most self-control. The man who can experience everything and reveal nothing. The man who can absorb treachery without a flicker, music, endure provocation without reacting, and process anguish without allowing it to corrupt his judgment. That man is not cold. That man is not broken. That man is dangerous in the most sophisticated manner possible, because you cannot manipulate what you cannot destabilize. Consider the individuals in your life who have pushed your buttons, triggered your insecurities, or elicited reactions from you that you subsequently regretted. Now, grasp something unequivocally. Every single time you reacted emotionally in a situation, music, that demanded composure, you ceded authority over yourself to that person. You showed them the precise lever to pull. You revealed the exact pressure point, music, that bypasses your reason and assumes command of your behavior. Music, and they stored that information away. Consciously or unconsciously, they now understand how to influence you. Dark psychology is predicated entirely on this principle. Locate the emotional trigger, apply the appropriate pressure, and observe a man abandoning his own strategy to pursue a feeling. The solution is not to become devoid of emotion. Suppression is not equivalent to mastery. An individual who suppresses his emotions is merely someone seated atop a pressure cooker, functional until the moment he is not, and catastrophic when the lid finally explodes. True emotional mastery is something far more refined. It is the capacity to feel the music, full weight of an emotion. The rage, the sorrow, the mortification, the terror, music, and consciously select your response rather than unconsciously succumbing to your reaction. It is the practice, music, of interposing space between an impetus and an action, a breath, a pause, a moment of cool, strategic clarity before you determine how to proceed. It is training yourself through repeated discipline to pose a single question before you respond to anything that provokes you. Does this reaction serve my long-term vision, or does it serve my internal wound? Because those are the only two choices available to you in every emotionally charged moment. You are either acting from a position of strength or reacting from a place of pain. You are either executing your strategy or abandoning it to gratify an emotion that will dissipate in 20 minutes, but whose repercussions will linger for years. Machiavelli's man invariably opts for power, not because he experiences no feelings, but because he has disciplined himself to value his enduring position over his momentary relief. He plays the long game with the patience of an individual who comprehends, music, that genuine victory is never achieved in the instant of provocation. It is won in the months and years that follow, when the man who maintained his composure is still standing, still building, music, still progressing, while the man who reacted is still offering explanations, still recovering, still bearing the cost for a single moment of emotional music indulgence. Your emotions serve as information. Utilize them, but never, under any circumstances, music, permit them to utilize you. Type, "I control my mind" in the comments right now, because that singular decision, practiced daily, will alter the entire trajectory of your existence. Point 7. Your inner circle dictates your ultimate potential. There is a truth so disquieting, music, that most men dedicate their entire lives to devising sophisticated methods of avoiding its confrontation. The individuals you surround yourself with are either accelerating your ascent or tacitly orchestrating your decline. Not dramatically, not overtly, not in ways that are easily identified and explained, but consistently. Music, subtly, and with a precision that only becomes apparent when you reflect years later and ask yourself why you remain in the same place you were when you first encountered them. Machiavelli was unyielding on this point. Not cruel, unyielding. There is a crucial music distinction between the two that most people conflate, because it is simpler to label a man as cold than to acknowledge music, the sagacity in his boundaries. Cruelty destroys without purpose. Unyielding determination eliminates without guilt that which genuinely obstructs the music path forward, and the wrong individuals in your inner circle are not merely an inconvenience. They constitute a ceiling. They represent the invisible upper limit on how far your thinking can expand, how boldly your ambition can breathe, and how clearly your vision can develop when every interaction pulls you back towards the average of their own comfort and limitations. Understand the underlying structure, music, of influence. You do not merely absorb the habits of those around you. You absorb their convictions about what is achievable. You absorb their relationship with risk, with discipline, with discomfort, and with excellence. You absorb their definitions of triumph and their tolerance for setbacks. And if the individuals closest to you possess narrow definitions, low tolerances, and music, a profound comfort with mediocrity, then no amount of personal ambition will fully shield you from the gravitational pull of their collective energy. This is not arrogance. This is fundamental physics. Energy is contagious in both directions, upwards and downwards, and proximity determines the vector of the contagion. Music. Now, examine your circle with the cool, objective gaze of a strategist, rather than the warm, lenient eyes of someone who confuses allegiance with obligation. Who in your life consistently, music, challenges you to strive for more? Who holds you to a rigorous standard, rather than accepting excuses? Who conveys the truth to you, even when that truth is uncomfortable, because they respect your potential more than they fear your reaction? And conversely, who quietly depletes you, music, each time you interact with them? Who responds to your progress with subtle undermining disguised as wit? Who becomes uneasy, music, when you begin to succeed, when you start to transform, when you begin operating at a level that renders their music, own inertia more conspicuous by comparison? These individuals, regardless of shared history, regardless of collective memories, regardless of how long they have been present in your life, are not your confederates. They are anchors, and a man striving to ascend cannot tolerate anchors, no matter how familiar and reassuring those anchors may feel in his grasp. Machiavelli understood that the prince who surrounded himself with sycophants, with inadequate counsel, and with men who valued their own comfort above veracity, was a prince already in the process of decline. He simply had not yet reached his nadir. The caliber of your inner circle directly reflects the standard you establish for your own existence. When you elevate your standard, the composition of your circle will undergo a change, music, and that transition will be disquieting. Certain individuals will depart. You'll intentionally need to create distance from others. Connections you believed were enduring will prove to be dependent on you staying the compliant version of yourself who never confronted those in your vicinity. Allow them to music depart, without rancor, without public declaration, without the theatrics of someone requiring their limits to be observed, music, and celebrated. Rather, with the calm, determined resolve of an individual who has chosen their path and grasps music, that not all companions who began the voyage are prepared or inclined to arrive at the end. Substitute close association with clear intent. Cultivate your surroundings with the identical strategic exactness you use for your objectives. Look for individuals who are constructing, contemplating, acting with deliberate purpose, and performing with music rigor. Inhabit spaces that compel you to develop simply to maintain pace. Engage in discussions that elevate your potential, instead of merely validating your present limitations. For the truth Machiavelli wove into every manuscript he produced is this: no one ascends in isolation. Only the appropriate individuals ascend collectively. Select your associates with a sovereign's discernment, not the urgency music of one who merely dreads solitude. Write "My circle defines my standard" in the comments, music, immediately. Then proceed to assess that group with the candor this juncture demands. Point 8. Cultivate inscrutability. Render yourself invincible. The most influential figures throughout history weren't necessarily the most vociferous. They weren't the most confrontational, the most overtly commanding, or the most manifestly daunting. Their key attribute was their inscrutability. These were individuals who traversed existence resembling deep, music, waters, tranquil above, unfathomable from a vantage point, and possessing considerably more might below the surface than any music, outward appearance conveyed. Machiavelli meticulously examined these individuals. He grasped that in an environment predicated on rivalry and inherent human tendencies, openness isn't a strength, it's a weak point. If others can fully comprehend you, they can anticipate your moves. If they can foresee your responses, they can influence your choices. Should they clearly discern your aspirations, anxieties, frailties, and sensitivities, they possess a blueprint for your downfall, and a majority will exploit it, not strictly due to ill will, but because humans instinctively utilize every accessible benefit when their music, personal concerns are paramount. This isn't pessimism. This is an unbiased analysis of human conduct that Machiavelli devoted his life to chronicling, and disregarding it doesn't confer nobility. It merely reveals naivety. The individual opting for complete transparency in a world populated by astute observers is music, not demonstrating authenticity. Instead, he is being tactically imprudent with the most precious asset, music, at his disposal, personal data. Now, grasp the true implications of becoming inscrutable, as it doesn't concern superficial music deceit. It isn't about fabricating falsehoods, putting on an act, or fabricating a spurious music persona for public consumption. Rather, it concerns tactical profundity. It involves cultivating such a multitude of facets to your personality, music, your thoughts, and your actions that no one individual ever grasps the full music scope of your identity, your aspirations, and your modus operandi. It entails perfecting the skill of disclosing solely what furthers your immediate aim, and retaining all else with the self-control of one who appreciates that music. Every morsel of personal data he divulges is either an implement or an armament, and an unsuitable individual possessing inappropriate intelligence about you at an inopportune time could result in losses greater than you are willing to bear. The inscrutable individual is not unfeeling as commonly supposed. He exhibits warmth when it fulfills an objective. He displays candor when transparency, music, forges the appropriate connection. He is captivating when charisma proves the most potent tool at that instant, yet none of this occurs by chance. Music. Nothing is without deliberation. Every gesture, every revelation, every instance of seeming fragility is a deliberate, decision made by a man constantly strategizing 3 steps beyond the interaction. He is presently engaged in. In the field of dark psychology, this is termed controlled projection, the intentional management of the persona and data you permit the public to view. It distinguishes between someone who merely occupies a space and someone who precisely dictates how that space perceives him. One is unassertive, the other commands authority. The disparity between them stems not from inherent ability or charm, but from sustained attentiveness, and deliberate action over a prolonged period. Individuals find themselves attracted to the inscrutable man in manners they struggle to fully verbalize. There resides an allure in enigma that no degree of ostentatious self-advertisement can duplicate. If someone cannot entirely decipher you, they ponder you for extended periods. They observe with greater scrutiny. They attribute a gravitas to you that surpasses any declaration you might have overtly made. You automatically become intriguing. You transform into an individual meriting observation, comprehension, and pursuit across professional, social, music, and personal spheres. Furthermore, in an environment where focus represents the most sought-after asset, the individual who commands it without actively pursuing it has mastered one of the most refined manifestations of existing power. Cultivate depth. Act intentionally. Evolve into the man people perceive as operating on a plane they haven't yet attained. Utter less than you comprehend. Display fewer emotions than you experience. Disclose less than you intend. Then observe how the world's disposition towards you alters, without any need for you to insist upon it. In the comments now, write "You cannot read me." For this isn't merely an utterance. It signifies a declaration of the benchmark you are establishing for how the world will perceive you from this moment onwards. Item 9. The individual who commands undeniable presence. All that we have constructed throughout this address, self-governance, discretion, emotional regulation, the carefully chosen associates, the impenetrable profundity, culminates here in one singular result. The person whom no one can disregard. Not because he insists on being noticed. Not because he performs for it, pursues it, or contrives scenarios intended to position himself centrally. Rather, it's because he has undertaken such profound, continuous, and absolute internal development, that his very presence possesses a gravitas palpable in a room before he utters a single word. This is the individual for whom Machiavelli composed his writings. This represents the ultimate aim of the doctrine. Appreciate that being undeniably present doesn't equate to being universally liked. Certain individuals will experience unease in the presence of this evolved version of you. Some will feel intimidated by the calm assurance of a man who no longer requires their affirmation, their sanction, or their consent to operate at the pinnacle of his capabilities. That apprehension is not an issue for you to resolve. It is merely the resistance that invariably arises when a refined version of an individual navigates settings that were aligned with his former, less developed self. Allow them to adapt. You will not regress. The man of undeniable presence enters a space and alters its atmosphere without declaring his advent. He speaks, and people pay heed, not due to his vociferousness, but because his every utterance carries the import of a man who genuinely means his words and has demonstrated this through his conduct long prior to the present. He makes choices without fanfare, implements them without declaration, and generates outcomes that communicate with a distinctness and command no theatrical display could ever rival. He has no need to assert his potency. You perceive it. You discern it in his bearing, his management of responses, his selection of vocabulary, and his navigation through challenges without the overt signs of distress that often expose most individuals under duress. He is the embodiment of every demanding decision made in solitude. Every enticement he withstood when ease was an option, and every benchmark he upheld for himself when yielding would have been considerably simpler. Such an individual is not a figment of imagination. Music. That person is the inescapable consequence of all that this doctrine requires of you, and you are nearer to becoming him than you perceive. Enter, I cannot be ignored in the comments. For it is time to fully embrace this truth. Point 10. This doctrine is now yours. You have reached the culmination of this address, yet grasp this with clarity. This is not an ending. This marks a fresh start. All the information conveyed throughout these 10 music segments wasn't mere amusement. It constituted guidance. It was a detailed plan provided by the most objective, discerning, and pragmatically candid intellect ever to analyze the intricacies of music, authority, and human behavior. Machiavelli did not pen his works for the general populace. He wrote for the individual prepared to confront reality unflinchingly, without diluting its harshness, and without withdrawing into comforting delusions that preserve self-esteem but obliterate capability. That individual is you. Or he represents the iteration of yourself currently being tempered in the crucible of everything. Music, this doctrine requires. The framework is straightforward in its design, yet unsparing in its implementation. Attain self-mastery prior to attempting to control anything external. Place yourself first without regret or justification. Transform yourself into something distinctive, something competent, something the world cannot readily substitute or disregard. Govern your feelings with the exactitude of a tactician who appreciates that music, each impulsive choice constitutes a relinquishment of influence. Select your inner circle with the sagacity of a monarch who understands his surroundings are either his most valuable resource or his most concealed weakness. Proceed discreetly. Music. Function with profundity and evolve to be so multifaceted, so self-controlled, and so inwardly fortified that the world is compelled to acknowledge your existence and contend with your achievements. This isn't a doctrine to be perused once and then set, music, aside. It is a set of principles you embody daily, purposefully, and without anticipating ideal circumstances. For such conditions will never materialize, and the individual who postpones action will do so indefinitely. Initiate today with a single choice, a solitary benchmark. Music, a sole limit you decline to violate. Then, construct from that foundation with the forbearance and accuracy of one no longer driven by sentiment, but by foresight. The world does not bestow its accolades upon the most gifted individual. It rewards the most unyielding. Be unceasing. Be enigmatic. Be impervious. Embody the man for whom Machiavelli composed his principles. The individual who first mastered himself, first prioritized his own being, and became undeniably present. For the final occasion, music, in this presentation, type, I am the code, in the comments immediately and assert everything that declaration symbolizes.